This lesson is about surface area of a cylinder. So what I'd like to do first is I'm going to take this rectangle and I'm going to curl it up so that the edges meet. So it looks sort of cylindrical in shape, right? So I have a cylinder here, right? This cylinder has three separate surfaces. Right? So mine, I mean, they're missing right now, but I could take a circle and put a circle right there. I could put another circle on the bottom, right? That's another circle on the bottom. And then I've got this flat surface that wraps around that you can see when I open it up, it's a rectangle, right? So we need a way to find the area of this part. So finding the area of this part is easy. We know how to find the area of a circle. And then we've got an identical circle on this side, right? So that's easy. These are called the bases. They're parallel to each other, right? And these bases are congruent. So once I find one circle area, I'm just going to double it because that's going to give me both circle areas. Now the rectangle is a little trickier. The rectangle, we've got this length of the rectangle and the width, right? Or the base of the rectangle and the height. That's what we need in order to find the area of this shape. Now, if I'm going to find the area, right, I'm going to need a way to describe this besides just saying base and height because I don't know what those are, right, of this rectangle. But watch what happens. When I curl this back up into a cylinder, this, starting from here and going all the way around, is the length of my rectangle, right? So watch it again. Keep an eye on this length of the rectangle. Keep an eye on where it goes. It becomes a circle. And what do we call the distance around a circle? The circumference. So this long part, or the base of my rectangle, is the circumference of this circle, right? So this rectangle, I'm going to draw a rectangle here. This is a picture of my rectangle. And this distance across the top is just my circumference, which we know we can write circumference as d times pi, or we can write it as 2 pi r, right? That's the length along the top of the rectangle. Now I need this part of the rectangle, right? Because I need to do base times height. Well, if I curl it up again, here's my cylinder, right? It's this measurement right here. It didn't change. It's still the same. And that measurement is the height of my cylinder, right? So when I unfurl this distance is the circumference of my circle. This distance is the height of my cylinder. Okay, so we're going to call that H. So I want to find the area of this. So the area of this rectangle, which forms the curved surface of my cylinder, is the base times the height. All right, then that's the curved part, right? Then if I need to find this area and this area, because remember, I said in the beginning, every cylinder has three distinct surfaces, right? We've got a surface that's the base on the top, we've got a surface that's the base on the bottom, and we've got this wraparound rectangle, right? So this is a circle. We know how to find the area of a circle. This is an identical circle. So I didn't mean to launch that. So we can find the area of just one base, right, which we know is pi r squared, or we can write it as r times pi, and then we double it. All right, so this gives us the area of both of the circles, and this part gives us the area of that rectangle that wraps around the side. So the reason I want to preface this lesson with this explanation is because, well, the surface area for a cylinder formula can look a little overwhelming, but it's not. That's where it comes from. So the surface area of a cylinder is just 2 times the area of a base, right, plus that rectangle, right, which is the circumference times the height. This is the formula for the surface area of a cylinder. This is the formula that we're going to use. Another way we could write this is 2 times the area of the base plus the circumference times the height, right? It means the same thing. This part gives us the 2 circles, right? We've got a circle on the top and a circle on the bottom. This part gives us that rectangle that's laid out that forms the curved surface that goes around the sides. All right, so let's do it. Determine the surface area of the cylinder. Use pi equals 3.14. So I'm going to write my formula. Actually, let's not write the formula. Let's just find the area of the circles first, right? So the area of the circles, we know that that's r times pi, right? So my radius is 5, so that's going to give me 5 times 5 times pi. That's going to give me 25 pi. But remember, that's just one circle. Oh, let's use 3.14. So 25 times 3.14, 25 times 3.14 is 78.5. But that is just one circle, right? This is 78.5 and this is 78.5. Each one is 78.5. All right, now let's find the area of that rectangle. So we know that area of a rectangle is base times height, but in this problem, the base of our rectangle is the circumference of our circle, right? So we're going to do circumference times height of the cylinder. So our circumference is diameter times pi, and then we'll multiply that by the height. All right, so the diameter, we're not given, but we are given that the radius is 5, and the radius is halfway, right? The diameter is all the way. So if the radius is 5, that means that the diameter is going to be 10. So I'll have 10 times 3.14 times my height, which is 4, and that's going to give me, I'll just multiply the 10 in my head, so 31.4 times 4 is 125.6. So that's the area for this part, right? Then I just have to add them together. So 125.6 plus, oh, let's find out what 78.5 times 2 is, so we can get both circles. So 78.5 times 2 is 157. Okay, so 125.6 plus 157 282.6, and that is square inches because we are still talking area here. All right, so these problems are a little longer because you're finding the area of both circles and the area of that rectangle that wraps around. And then you're adding it together. Let's try another one. All right, so for this one, I'm going to use the decimal form of these numbers, if that's all right with you guys. So My radius is 1.25. I'll just write it up here. And down at the bottom, I'll write the height. The height of my cylinder is 2.75. So let's find the area of the circles first. Yeah, sound good? So we know that the area of one circle is r times pi. Oh, in terms of pi, I love it. Makes it so much easier. So r times pi means that we're going to do 1.25 times 1.25 times pi, right? So that's going to be 1.25 times 1.25 is 1.5625 pi. All right, that's one circle, right? But I've got two circles. I've got one on the top and I've got one on the bottom. So 2 times my area is going to be, let me double this, 3.125 pi, and that is square centimeters. All right, so that's both of my circles. Then I've got the rectangle that wraps around, right? And remember, that area of that rectangle is my circumference times the height of the cylinder, right? And we can write circumference as 2 pi r, and then we're multiplying by the height of the cylinder. Okay, so let's do that. So we've got 2 times pi times my radius, which again is 1.25, times the height, which is 2.75. All right, let's put that all in the calculator, except for the pi, of course. So if I double 2 times 1.25 is 2.5. So 2.5 times 2.75 is 6.875 pi, and that is also square centimeters. So now I've got to put the rectangle that wraps around the sides together with the circles. So I'm going to add 6.875 and 3.125, and I get 10. So 10 pi, don't forget the pi, it's still part of your answer, square centimeters is the surface area of our cylinder. All right, let's try another one. Okay, so let's take a look back at that formula, right? So the formula that we wrote originally is our two circles, right? That's pi r squared is the area of one circle. We double it because there's one on the top and one on the bottom. And then we've got that rectangle, which is the circumference times the height. So now let's put in all the numbers except for the pi, and then we can see which one matches what we get. All right, so my radius is not given here, right? My diameter is. The diameter is 2.8. So halfway across, right? Half of that would be 1.4. So my radius is 1.4. The height is clear, right? That's my height, because the height is always the distance between the two bases. Even if it's diagonal, even if it's laying on its side, the height is always the distance between the two circles. All right, so let's put it all in. We're going to have 2 pi, and then we're going to have radius, which is 1.4 to the second, right? Because we do r times pi for our circle area. Then we've got the rectangle, so we've got the circumference, which is 2 times pi, times the radius, 1.4 again, times the height, which is 4.2. So if we look at, and they all say square feet, so that's not a concern. We know that this one and this one, they didn't use the radius. They used the diameter instead, right? See it right there? They used the diameter and squared that. So we know it can't be the first one and it can't be the third one. So now let's look at the second choice and the last choice. Which one matches ours? It's kind of hard to tell, right? So we've got 2 pi r squared. So the beginning is correct. This part and this part are correct. Then this says 2.8 pi times 4.2. And you might be looking at ours going, well, we don't have a 2.8, so it can't be that one. But take another look at our numbers. We have 2 times 1.4 times 4.2, right? So think about when you multiply 2 times 1.4. Yeah, I think you see it now, right? That's 2.8. So that's where this 2.8 comes from. Down here, they didn't multiply the 1.4 times 2. They totally left out the 2 altogether. So this one cannot be it. So for this one, for my version of the question that I got, the correct answer is B. Now remember, the version that you got on your assignment may or may not be the same exact one as mine. So you can't just think, oh, it's B and just choose B. There are 3 different versions of this question, so I don't know which one you're going to get. All right, we have a cylindrical candy container, and by the way, when they show it like this, all flattened out, that's called a net. And they want to know, they say the container is covered in plastic wrap. So that's covering all 3 surfaces, the top, the bottom, and the curved rectangle. How many square inches of plastic wrap were used to wrap the container? Write the answer in terms of pi. Yes, another in terms of pi. Okay, so I'm going to write out our formula. This time I am going to use the formula. So 2 times the area of our circle plus the circumference times the height of the cylinder, right? Now you know where those 2 parts come from. Okay, so let's do it. So we've got the area of the circle. We need to know the radius. We're not given the radius, we're given the diameter. If all the way across is 1.6, then half of that, half of 1.6 is 0.8, right, or 8/10. So I'm going to write my radius right here because I'm going to need it. And then my height, I have right here, right? That's my height. All right. So let's just fill in what we've got. We've got 2 times pi times the radius squared, so 0.8 times itself, and then 2 times pi times the radius times the height. Okay, now when we put this in our calculator, we're not including the pi, remember, because it says in terms of pi. But follow order of operations. We have to square first. So 0.8 times 0.8 equals 0.64, 64 hundredths, right? Then this part is 64 hundredths. Then I have to multiply that by this 2 right here. So times 2 equals, and I get 1.28, and then my pi is still there, right? Because remember, multiplication, it doesn't matter what order we multiply in, right? But we do have to do the exponent first. So, because that's order of operations, right? But then after that, multiplication is commutative. So it doesn't matter if we do 2 times pi times 0.64 or 2 times 0.64 times pi, right? We're just changing the order of the multiplication. It's commutative, so that's fine. So we did 2 times 0.64 and got 1.28. Okay, let's move on to the second part. So the second part, we're going to multiply any order we want, right? But we have to multiply the 2, the 8/10, and the 7/10. So 2 times 8/10 times 7/10 equals, and I get 1.12 pi. And now for my final answer, I'm just going to add those together because they both have a pi, so I can add them together. If they didn't both have pi, I would have to leave it separate. It's kind of like terms, right? But since they both have a pi, they're like terms, I can add them. So I'm going to add those two numbers together, 1.12 plus 1.28, and I get 2.4 pi, and that is going to be in square inches. And that's my surface area. All right, let's keep practicing. All right, let's see. New labels for their cylindrical shaped wheels of cheese. The label covers the entire wheel except the circular top and bottom. Okay, so now we're talking about the circle on the top and the circle on the bottom. We're not looking at those, right? It's not covered by the label. The radius is 22 centimeters. The height is 16. How many square centimeters of the wheel does the label cover? Remember, we're not talking about the top and bottom. So we only need to use the second part of the formula, right? Because remember, here's our surface area formula. But this part is our circles, right? That part is the area of the two circles, the one on the top and the one on the bottom. So we don't need that this time. So we're just going to do the circumference times the height. So, and we're using a fraction for pi. So we've got 2. I'm going to put it over 1 since we've got a fraction for pi. Then we've got pi. Then the next thing here is r. So that is 22. And then h. So that is 16. All right, so then let's multiply that all out together. And then we'll divide by 7, right? So 2 times 22 times 22 times 16 equals, I'll write it down here, equals 15,488. And then we have a 7 on the bottom. So we'll divide that by 7. And we get 2,212.57 if I round to the hundredths place. And that is square centimeters. And that's how much the label would cover. All right, 2 more for you guys. Ice cream is packaged in cylindrical gallon tubs. A tub of ice cream has a total surface area of that much. If the diameter is 8 inches, what is the height? Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, so if the diameter is 8, remember in the surface area formula, we don't really need diameter, we need radius, right? So if the diameter is 8, we've talked about this a bunch already, right? That means the radius would be 4. I'm going to write out my formula and I'm going to plug in everything I know, right? So here's my surface area formula. Surface area equals 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. I've been told the surface area, so I'm going to replace that over here. 232.36. All right, then I'm going to bring down the 2, bring down the pi, but I'm going to write the number instead. The next thing in my formula is r to the second, which means 4 to the second. Then I've got another 2. Then I've got another pi. Then I've got another r. And then an h, because that's the part I don't know. I don't know the height. So let's crank all this out in the calculator, right? So I'm going to multiply all of this. I'm going to do the 4 to the second first. So 4 times 4 is 16. So 16 times 3.14 times 2. And this gives me 100.48. On this side, I'm going to multiply these together. So that's 2 times 4 is 8. So 8 times 3.14 is 25.12H. And I'm going to bring this down. Now, this should look familiar to you guys. This is giving, module 2. Remember? In module 2, we did all that like wrap the variable, unwrap the variable, order of operations to evaluate, reverse it to solve. Remember that? So there's two things happening to the h right now. The h is being multiplied by 25.12, and we are adding 100.48. If you think back, all that work we did in module 2, to solve this, we're going to have to do the inverse operations, right? We're going to have to subtract 100.48 first, because not only are we doing the opposite operation, we are going backwards in the order of operations, right? So 232.36 minus 100.48 equals, I got 131.88, and now I'm left with 25.12 times h. Well, we know how to undo multiplication, right? To undo multiplication, we divide. The h is being multiplied by 25.12, so we divide by 25.12, and we do it on both sides. So here it cancels. I'm going to write my answer over here. 131.88 divided by 25.12 gives me 5.25, and that is inches, not square inches, right? Because this is not area. I was asked to find the height, which is just inches. All right, one more. All right, we've got Bisecting Bakery sells cylindrical round cakes. The most popular cake at the bakery is the red velvet cake. It has a radius of 15 centimeters and a height of 12 centimeters. Everything but the circular bottom is iced. How many square centimeters of icing is needed? Okay, so let's look at our formula again. We know that our formula is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. Now, we know that we're going to need this part for sure, right? That's the icing that wraps around the sides of the cake, that curved rectangle that goes around the side of the cylinder. So for sure, we're going to need that. But let's look at the first part. This is 2 circles, right? That's what the 2 is for here. So that 2 is we're finding the area of one circle and doubling it because we've got identical circles on the top and the bottom. But for this problem, it's saying everything but the circular bottom was iced. So we don't have 2 circles for this one. We only have 1 circle. So we're going to get rid of this 2 because we're not going to double it. We're just going to find the area of that circle that's on the top of the cake, and then the lateral area, which is what it's called, the side area, the lateral area that wraps around the sides of the cake. All right, let's do it. So the surface area for this problem, we're going to do pi r squared, right, the first part. So that's going to be 3.14 times the radius, 15. And then the second part of my formula is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. And again, it's all calculator work, right? But do the 15 times 15 first, and then times 3.14. And you should be doing these on your calculator too. Like, don't just watch me do it, because you want to make sure that you get the same answers that I'm getting when you're doing it on your own, on your calculator. And then for the second part, 2 times 3.14 times 15 times 12. And notice, you guys, I'm following order of operations. I'm doing all of the multiplication before I use the plus sign that's in the middle of the formula, right? Adding is the last thing I do. All right, then I'm going to add these together. So plus 706.5 equals 1,836.9. And it says round to the nearest square centimeter. So 1,837 square centimeters. Let me know if you have questions. See you soon.